nobody saw this coming. After one of the most dramatic weeks in Indiana Fever history, after the clipboard incident went viral, after Cheryl Miller went on ESPN and called out the situation publicly, after the entire WNBA world spent days debating whether Stephanie White had lost Caitlin Clark, Clark herself sat down in front of the media and said something that shocked absolutely everyone. She defended Stephanie White, passionately, without hesitation, and with a level of emotion that made it impossible to dismiss as damage control or PR spin. So what is really going on inside the Indiana Fever? Because what Clark said completely changes the narrative. Let's break it all down. For context, let's quickly recap what happened this week. Footage emerged of Stephanie White visibly yelling at Clark on the bench during Indiana's loss to Portland. White slammed her clipboard. Clark threw her hands up. White benched her star player at the 6-minute 30-second mark of the first quarter while Indiana was winning. Portland went on a 13-2 run the moment Clark sat down. The Fever never recovered. Clark's post-game message, "Officiating wasn't my problem tonight," sent shockwaves across the league. Cheryl Miller went on ESPN and said the frustration was boiling over, and White needs to give Clark more help. The calls to fire White got louder than ever. Every drama channel, every analyst, every fan account was saying the same thing. This relationship is done. Clark wants out. White has lost her. And then Clark walked up to that microphone and said this.
A lot of things, and I ride for Steph. I ride for these girls. Steph has my back more than anybody, so, nobody in that locker room, in our locker room, or Steph, or our coaching staff thought twice about it. It's just another example of what everybody, all of you, want to blow up and make something that is just lost and not in reality.
Let that sink in. Steph has my back more than anybody. After everything that happened this week, after the footage went viral, after ESPN dedicated segments to discussing their relationship, after fans called for White's firing across every platform imaginable, Caitlin Clark sat down and said Stephanie White has her back more than anybody. That is not a carefully worded PR statement. That is not a player reading from a script handed to her by the front office. That is genuine. That is personal. And it completely reframes everything we thought we understood about what is happening inside this organization. But Clark didn't stop there. Because what she said next is what really stopped everyone in their tracks. She didn't just defend White's coaching. She talked about their relationship on a human level, in a way that made it clear this is something that goes far beyond basketball.
When I got hurt at the Connecticut game last year, I bawled in Steph's arms. That's somebody I will ride for the rest of my life. Those are the moments that people behind, people don't see that. People that just sit on their phones all day, they don't see those moments. They don't see the moments where we come into work. They don't see the moments that really absolutely suck, that people have your back, but they think
She bawled in Steph's arms. When Clark was hurt, when the season felt like it was falling apart, when everything was going wrong, Stephanie White was there. And Clark is telling you that directly. She's telling you that the person everyone spent this week calling for to be fired was the person who held her when she cried. That's not a coaching relationship. That's a genuine human connection. And Clark is saying publicly that those moments, the ones the cameras never capture, the ones the drama channels never cover, the ones the social media accounts never see, those are the moments that define what this relationship actually is. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because Clark wasn't just defending White, she was also holding herself accountable in a way that went far beyond what most star players would ever say publicly. When asked what led to the moment on the bench, Clark kept it simple. She said they were down 20 points. That's it. No blame, no drama. Just the reality of two competitive people boiling over in a tough moment. She acknowledged that the pressure of being a point guard, of carrying a franchise, of being under a microscope every single moment, sometimes gets to her. And she said something that you almost never hear from a player of her stature. Clark was careful not to speak to any specific recent incident, but her message was clear. She said the pressure of being a point guard sometimes gets to you, and when it does, that's on me. I have to be better. I critique myself more than anybody. I critique myself more than anybody. That is remarkable accountability from the most scrutinized player in women's basketball history. Clark isn't pointing fingers at her coach. She isn't blaming the front office. She isn't demanding a trade. She is looking in the mirror and saying she has to be better. That tells you a lot about who Caitlin Clark is as a competitor and as a teammate. White's response to the media was equally revealing. Rather than being defensive about the footage or the criticism, White chose to address the bigger picture of what their relationship actually looks like behind closed doors. White said the moment died right there on the bench. That as far as the team was concerned, it was over the moment it happened. She called out the media narrative directly, pointing out that player-coach tension is not new in sports. It's not unique to the Fever. It happens everywhere. The only difference is that everything Caitlin Clark does gets clicks. And that is just the reality of coaching the most high-profile player in women's basketball. White also said something that perfectly captures how these two actually see each other. She said they are more alike than different. Both competitive, both stubborn, both emotional, both driven by an intense desire to win. And when that much competitive fire is in one building, moments like what happened against Portland are inevitable. But they don't define the relationship. So what is really going on inside the Indiana Fever? Here's what we actually know. The team had a 2-hour meeting after the Portland loss, and interestingly, it wasn't supposed to come out. Sophie Cunningham let it slip during her own media availability. The team had a significant meeting after the Portland loss. Sophie Cunningham confirmed it during her media availability, saying they had a long meeting. It was really good. They built back all the layers and everyone is on a good page. White later confirmed the meeting lasted close to 2 hours. A 2-hour meeting. After back-to-back losses, where the team went line by line through offense and defense, where players spoke honestly about where they are and where they need to be. Sophie called it coach-created and then player-led, meaning White started it, but the players took ownership of it. That is not what a broken locker room looks like. That is not what a team whose star player wants out looks like. That is a group of competitive people who are frustrated with where they are and doing the work to fix it. Cunningham said something after that meeting that perfectly captures the mood. She said they're too soft right now and that's not their identity. She said they have all the pieces but need to put the puzzle together. And Kelsey Mitchell added something that reframes the entire week of drama in a completely different light. She said what everyone saw as turmoil was actually passion. And turmoil is good when it comes early because it forces honesty. That word, honesty, kept coming up throughout both press conferences. Clark being honest about needing to be better. White being honest about the challenges of coaching under a microscope. Cunningham being honest about the defensive scheme limitations. Mitchell being honest about where the team actually is right now. This is not an organization in denial. This is not a team hiding from its problems. This is a group of people having the hard conversations that most teams avoid until it's too late. Clark also addressed the defensive situation directly, the one that Cheryl Miller called out on ESPN, the ISO ball problem that opposing teams have been exploiting all season.
I've guarded probably the most isolations in the league so far, but I think just using my body a little bit better, a lot of backpedaling in the last game. I think like forcing the catch out a little bit further, make them take a few dribbles outside the three-point line rather than them letting them in the paint.
She knows. Clark knows exactly what the problem is, and she already has a plan to fix it. She pointed to the improvement between the first Golden State game and the second one, forcing contested jump shots from 15 feet rather than giving up layups at the rim. That is a player who watches film obsessively, a player who critiques herself constantly, a player who is actively working on the exact weakness that opponents are exploiting, and a player who is doing all of this while carrying the weight of an entire franchise on her shoulders every single night. So let's answer the question this title is asking: what is really going on inside the Indiana Fever? Here is what the evidence actually shows when you look past the drama and the viral clips and the social media noise. Clark and White have a genuine relationship built on real moments that the cameras never capture. The bench incident happened because Indiana was down 20 points and two intensely competitive people boiled over in a tough moment. Clark is holding herself accountable publicly. White is standing by her player publicly. The team had a 2-hour meeting to address everything honestly. Cunningham and Mitchell are speaking openly about what needs to change. And Clark has already identified how she plans to fix the defensive issues that have been exposed all season. This is not a team falling apart. This is a team being tested, There is a significant difference. The Indiana Fever have the Commissioner's Cup coming up. They have Angel Reese and the Atlanta Dream on Thursday. They have a season that is still very much alive, and a roster that, by everyone's admission, has all the pieces to compete for a championship. The drama you watched this week was real. The frustration was real. The tension was real. But so is the relationship between Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White. So is the accountability being shown in those press conferences. And so is the competitive fire that is going to make Indiana a very dangerous team when they finally get it all pointed in the same direction. The question was, what is really going on in Indiana? The answer is this. Two incredibly competitive people who both want to win more than anything are going through the growing pains that every great team goes through before they figure it out. And based on everything Clark said today, they are not done figuring it out together. What do you think? Is Clark's defense of White genuine? Or is there still more to this story? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because we have full coverage of the Fever's matchup with Angel Reese and the Atlanta Dream coming tomorrow. We'll see you then.